everyone, this is Tanya Gibbs from Psycho Mom Scrapbooks and More, and today we are going to make the rose that is on the cover of the recipe album. And the rose, made it out of what I'm calling Plaper. It's plastic grocery bags that are fused together with freezer paper. And this lesson is going to take a couple of videos to get through because it's quite long, so please be patient, and I hope you enjoy it. So to get started, the supplies that you will need are going to be a plastic grocery bag that you have neatly folded, and you want to get all of the air out of it as much as possible and get all the creases followed up. And you're going to need an iron that is set to the hottest setting without steam. And you're also going to need a small piece of freezer paper that you can fold in half. And I folded mine in half and then I cut it in half so that I could maximize the use of my paper. And you want to make sure that the wax side of the freezer paper is folded towards the inside. First thing you're going to do is inside these pleats, you have an extra ply here than you would in the center of the bag because it's almost 4 layers thick on each side. So I want my Plaper to be exactly the same size. So I'm going to fold, and you don't need to worry about the logo that's on the inside of the bag, but I'm going to fold mine towards the middle from one side, and then I'm going to fold it towards the middle from the other side so that everything has the same width or the same thickness. Then once I have those together, I'm going to take the handles and cut the handles off and discard those. And I'm also going to cut the bottom of the bag right along the seam. This will allow the air to escape as we move up and down and help to keep it a little neater. Then I'm going to take it and I'm going to fold it into thirds. And this is going to make a pretty thick sheet of paper. Excuse me. So get all the air out of it, and don't worry about that logo because we're going to cover it up with ink before we're finished with the project, so you're not going to see any of that anyway. And I used a dark bag so that you could see it in the video. You can use any color bag. It will not matter. And you're going to take that bag and you're going to sandwich it inside the freezer paper. And then on a surface that I'm using a tile for my surface that I found at a hardware store for $1. It's a smooth, and I like it because it doesn't matter if I iron on it. If I mess it up, it doesn't matter. It's not my countertop or my ironing board. So be very careful, put something down to protect your surfaces that need to be protected. And you also want to make sure that on your freezer paper, if you weren't real neat when you ripped it off, which I'm usually not, I go back and I kind of trim the edges just a little bit so that all of that overhang of wax doesn't end up fusing to my surface. I want this to, it doesn't have to be super neat, but you don't want any of that exposed because it will ruin the surface. Because it will melt. So what you're going to do is, again, get all the air out as much as you can, and then you're going to take your iron and start where you have your pleat in your freezer paper, and you're going to move towards yourself, and very slowly adding pressure and just moving slow across. This gets very hot, so be careful if you have to handle it. It's going to curl just a little bit, but that's okay. As it cools, it will straighten back out again. And then I'm going to go back over it again, one more time. And you can see, it's hard to see in the video, but you can see a few little wrinkles. That just means that that hasn't fused yet. So just to continue to drag and add a small amount of pressure. You can hear the air coming out of it. And go all the way to the bottom. One more time. I try to do it 3 or 4 times. Going very slow. Then in the far corner, and be very careful because this is hot, you want to flip it over and do it from the back as well. Now once this is made, I'm going to come back and around the paper bag I'm going to trim off the excess freezer paper and trim it down to a good size so that I can put it on my Cricut mat and cut it. That's going to be my second step, is cutting it on the Cricut. Now you can cut it with any die cutting system as long as, I just experimented with it first, but any die cutting system you can use. I don't know about electronic cutters because I only have a Cricut, but I cut just fine with the Cricut. Now we're going to move over to the Cricut. So now we're over at the Cricut, and I have got everything taped down. What I did was I took my Plaper and I taped it down to the top of the mat, and the first time I'm using a 12 by 12 cutter, so if you're using a 6 by 12 cutter, always stay in the top region of your mat, the top first position of your mat. And you're going to tape down the Plaper with masking tape to the Cricut mat, and you want to make sure you're using a sticky mat so it will stick from underneath. I've already pre-cut some of these so that the tutorial isn't dragging on forever with watching you cut the blade. I think that's kind of redundant and boring, but anyway, you're going to multi-cut. Now, if you are using an expression, these are the settings that you will use. I will tell you the ones for the baby bug in just a second. But on the expressions, what you're going to do is you're going to set your speed to medium. You're going to set your pressure to max. You're going to have your blade depth set to 6. And if you are going to use I'm using the regular housing blade, but if you want to use the deep cut housing blade, you probably won't have to do as many multi-cuts with the deep cutting housing blade. I'm demonstrating this with the regular housing blade just to show that it can be done. I've also have mine set, at this point I have it set for portrait because I'm using the top. I'm going to do some landscape this time just so that I'm always in the right position every time I cut. And since I've already previously cut over here, I'm going to cut from this way this time before I take this off the mat. So I have portrait and I have multi-cut set. I have the shadow set and I have paper saver set. And then I'm going to choose the flower that is on the Plant and School book. You can also use the flower that is available with the George if you are using the other Cricut. Any flower really will work. I'm going to cut it twice, and I have my size set to 2 3/4 inch. So because I have it multi-cut, it's going to go ahead and cut it out 2 times. So while I'm telling you how to do the baby bug settings, I'm going to let this cut. So cut. So if you were going to use the baby bug, what you would do is you would have your pressure set to medium. You would also have your speed set to medium, your pressure set to the maximum, and then you would also have your blade depth set to 6. Now you can't multi-cut, so this next step that we're going to do, you're going to follow this setting. And you also do not have portrait, so you're always going to take your Plaper down to the front region of the mat, the top region of the mat. And remember that you can cut from both sides of the mat, so if you want to, you can also flip it over and use the other side of the mat to cut so that you're always cutting in the starting position. Just make sure that it's selected and put into the right region. Now, once you've cut it one time multi-cut on the Cricut, on the expressions, do not hit unload. This is very important. Until you know that this has been cut all the way through, do not unload. Hit load paper. The Cricut will then take the needle back up to the blade back up to the starting position, and then you're going to excuse me, hit repeat last on the keyboard, and then hit start or cut, and it's going to cut again. You may have to do this technique 6, 7, 8 times if you're using the regular blade. It doesn't matter. On this one I had to cut it 4 times, which is equivalent on multi-cut as 8 times on the baby bug. So be patient. It can be done. You just have to continually keep following these steps of load paper and then cut, load paper, repeat last, cut, load paper, repeat last, cut, and do not unload the paper whatever you do. If you happen to unload the paper, all is not lost. It has been engraved into it after the first pass. You could take some scissors and very easily cut it apart. It's just I don't like to do that if I don't have to. I'd rather let the bug do the work for me. But it is possible to just follow along on that traced. I'm going to do repeat last again. To follow along on that traced section and cut it out again. Oh, stop, 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 stop. See, I messed up. Hit load paper and then repeat last. And then cut. And the next step is going to be how we colored it and cut it out. So I'm going to stop this recording now. You don't need to watch it do its cutouts, and then you can pick up part 2 of this video.